Hello, everybody. Thanks for clicking on the video. This video is expressly for LPNs, and I'm going to walk you through my journey as an LPN, and I'm going to also give you some very sound career advice. And I'm also going to have timestamps in the description because this might turn out to be a lengthy video. So at least with the timestamps, you can go directly to the section that's most important to you. So we're going to start with my story, and I'm going to glance off to my right frequently just to make sure that I stay on point with my notes. So I'm going to talk about my story. So I've been an LPN for a very long time, and when I became an LPN, LPNs could work many more places than you could work now, but most LPNs are trained to, as soon as you start working, the next goal is to go and become an RN. So I knew kind of very early on in my LPN career that that's not what I wanted to do. Um, so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what my next steps were. So I just kind of stumbled. I just kind of just got into the routine of working and just trying to figure it out. And of course, time gets away from everybody when you don't have a plan. So um, I just got tired of it. I mean, I tried everything. I worked in every place an LPN could work. I worked all kinds of shifts. I never really was like a 7 to 3 person. So, but I worked weekends only. I worked 12 hours, 7P, 7A, evenings, nights. I mean, you name it. And what I realized was I like taking care of people, but I just did not like nursing. So I was kind of stuck, and I'm going to get to how I figured out my way a little later on. But I want to now pivot into nursing education. Nursing education does a great job in preparing you to be a nurse, and that, so and that for that purpose, they do it very well. But in terms of career options and letting nurses know what they can do other than work at the bedside, they do a lousy job. And I think that they could do better because there are so many nurses who don't know that there is a life for you to use your clinical skills and your nursing license away from the bedside. And I just think that schools could and should do a better job of preparing their graduates for the future in nursing, not just the future in bedside roles. So now I want to pivot into career options, because the number one career option for LPNs is a bridge program. And I know a lot of nurses who were LPNs and they did a bridge program and they became RNs. Um, I just knew, like I said, that that was not what I wanted to do. And in terms of uh, career options, there are other things that LPNs can do in way less time that can be just as impactful. So we know that a lot of LPNs pursue the LPN to RN bridge. There are a lot of LPNs who go and get degrees. They get associate's degrees, they get bachelor's degrees, and even higher in various other specialties and other areas. It could be business, it could be healthcare administration, and all of that is good if that is what your end goal is. Because I definitely do not want this to be that I am bashing someone going back to become an RN, or I'm bashing someone going to pursue a higher education. It's not that at all. It's just I just want LPNs to know that you have options that don't take a lot of time and you can make really, really good money. So we've talked about bridge programs, we've talked about degree programs, and now we're going to talk about medical coding. How I got into medical coding was purely by just persistence, because I had no idea, never heard of it, and did not get into it with the intentions of becoming what I am today. I got into it because I was trying to do HEDIS because once again I told you I wanted to get away from bedside, and I was friends with the nurse who had a friend who was doing HEDIS, and she was like, HEDIS is hard to get into because a lot of people don't like to train, but once you get someplace that will train you and you get in, you will be good. And she was right. And it took me honestly about maybe 2 to 3 years to get a job, honestly. And because HEDIS is it's a quality program that almost every insurance company does from typically January to May every year. So it's a short season, and they usually start hiring anytime from like sometimes as early as September the year prior to up until February or March when it really kicks off. So I just kept applying for positions, and luckily, a company called, and the only question he asked was, "Did I have a valid nursing license?" So I told him yes. So I told him I had a valid LPN license, and he was like, "Well, you have to keep your license active in order to to get this position." So he didn't really give a lot of detail. So at first I was like, "Well, this is really too easy." So um, needless to say, I got hired, but I did not get hired for HEDIS initially. I got hired for risk adjustment, and they trained us in ICD-10 CM, and I started out doing risk adjustment auditing. Then once I started to perform well with my QA scores, then that's when an opportunity for me to move into HEDIS presented itself. And then after that, I did HEDIS for like several years, and I even this particular company even started a travel team where I used to go nationwide to do HEDIS reviews on site. So that was how I got into medical coding. So now I want to talk about the future of healthcare. So as we know, like healthcare in this country is an industry, and going back to nursing education, the nursing profession does not prepare nurses at all for the entire revenue cycle. The revenue cycle is huge, and whether nurses realize it or not, we are in the revenue cycle, but we're in the mid revenue cycle, so we're in the middle. There are three parts. There's the front end, there's the middle, then there's the back end. So direct care healthcare is the mid cycle revenue. So within the revenue cycle, there are so many opportunities, and there are so many opportunities for you to use your clinical experience, your clinical background, your knowledge of disease processes, your knowledge of HIPAA, your knowledge of compliance. Like all of that can be used at any and every stage of the revenue cycle. It's just you have to find what fits for you or what interests you. So within the healthcare industry, there are a lot of opportunities. And once again, talking about like whether it's the front end, mid cycle, or back end. So within the revenue cycle, there's uh, you cannot talk about healthcare without talking about AI. And AI is in every section, every part of the revenue cycle. And it's not anything to be intimidated by. A lot of people are fearful of AI. And to be quite honest, AI has been used in medical coding since like 2015. Like because I started in risk adjustment in 2014, and in 2015 was when we first started using. They called it back then. They called it NLP, or natural language processing. So now it has advanced to the term artificial intelligence, but it started off as NLP. And you still may hear people refer it to NLP in certain healthcare settings, but it is nothing to be fearful of because the thing about AI is it is always going to require oversight. It's always going to need a human to interact with it, to look at it, and to validate it. So during that validation process is where you have opportunity. Um, so I've had a lot of almost well the last three jobs I've had, all I do is pick up where AI left off, or AI presents this problem in the form of an edit, or in the form of something that you might need to review for a clinical validation. And it is up to you at that point, the human, to use your knowledge and your background to determine what you need to do with this information that AI presented. So I don't think AI is anything to be fearful of. I think that people need to um, just learn how to work with it, and learn uh, how to position yourself to be able to take advantage of it, because these companies are not going to get rid of AI anytime soon, because it helps them with time and money. So they're never going to get rid of it, but they will always, 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 always need somebody, a human, to overlook it, to oversee it, to monitor it, to respond to any kind of inputs that, or any kind of output that it gives you. So there's nothing to be fearful of from an AI perspective, in my opinion. But getting back to the revenue cycle, I cannot I can't impress upon you enough how important and how huge the revenue cycle is. As we all know, as nurses, the United States healthcare system is massive, massive. And a lot of people don't know. I'm even surprised sometimes. You may have gone to the hospital last year. Let's just say December of 2025. There will be people who will review your records up until 2028. Like, it just gets passed around for review, because you have insurance companies who want to check to make sure that their what they pay for is valid. Then you have the the facilities in themselves. They hire audit companies to review, because let's just say the insurance company says, well, no, that's not valid. They will have an audit company come in and review it, and they'll say, oh, yes, it is. So then you have this whole back and forth in this appeal process. So it just there's a lot of opportunity on the back end. And I just think that with medical coding, for me, medical coding was the bridge that I needed, because medical coding, combined with a clinical background and combined with a license, whether it's LPN, RN, nurse practitioner, it is invaluable on the business side of healthcare. I mean, I just cannot, I just can't, there's not enough time in a video to impress upon you how important and how lucrative the combination is. Because another thing I want to talk about are LPN salaries. Um, I'm just, I was kind of surprised when I started looking at LPN salaries like last year for direct care positions. And I'm like, I can't believe that this is what they're paying, when I made that when I was working years ago. I just can't believe that salaries have not changed. And so the solution to, like, a lot of LPNs, like, the solution is, well, let me go back to school and get some more education so I can make more money and have more opportunities, which is the right thing to do. I mean, nobody wants to be stuck. But with medical coding, literally, and this is no exaggeration, literally in 6 months, you can be trained. Actually, less than 6 months, but let's just say 6 months, you can be trained. Once you get certified, because you cannot do this. Like, there are very, very, very few jobs. Now, I was fortunate that I came in at a time where my job, that first took me in, they didn't require certification. They just trained you off the strength of being a nurse. So those kind of positions are very, very, very few and far between. But if you get certified, then your chances increase exponentially. Because the combination is your clinical background and your medical coding background. Once you learn medical coding, the two marry together perfectly, and you can have, there's so many opportunities that you can have all up and through the revenue cycle. Now, I've had to get into detail. I've worked inpatient CDI, I've worked outpatient CDI, and I've done inpatient DRG validation. And let's talk about CDI, because there are a lot of people who believe that LPNs can't work in CDI, which is totally not true. Um, then I want to also mention, like, there are, when I was doing some research, I I was shocked at what I found. Like, there are approximately like 3.5 million active registered nurses in the United States, and there are less than 700,000 active LPNs in the United States. And for number one, I thought that there were more LPNs than that, and I honestly thought there was more RNs than that. But what that showed me was, it showed me a few things. So it showed me that you have a lot of RNs who have never ever worked with an LPN. They don't even know what LPNs do or can do. So there's a disconnect, and there's a knowledge gap in what an LPN can do. So I think because of that, and because a lot of these positions are handled by and are taken up by a lot of RNs. A lot of RNs, when they hire, a lot of them are like, oh, no, well, you have to be an RN. And there are positions. I mean, I had one, and I've interviewed for several more, where you can be an RN or an LPN. And truthfully, to work in CDI, you don't need to be a nurse, period. So that's a whole nother conversation I don't want to get into right now, but you don't have to. But if you are, the clinical background is helpful, but it's not the only thing you need, because to be effective in CDI, you need to have a clinical background, because you need to really have a firm understanding of disease processes, and you also need to know medical coding guidelines, because you have to code out, and in every case that you take up, you have to code out completely, because you're the first person that is following this patient in the hospital. Coding doesn't get that same case until after the person is discharged. So you're there to come up with what they call a working DRG, and I don't want to go too much into detail about that. And I do have another video on my channel that talks about CDI workflow, and talks about and walks you through a CDI chart review. So that's, you can look at my other videos for that information. But you don't have to be an RN to work in CDI or to work in DRG validation. And then DRG validation, you have to have a coding credential. I haven't known most of the people that, well, everybody I've worked with, they've had some kind of coding credential in DRG, not so much CDI. So, because in CDI, they, like I told you, like, they mainly hire RNs. There are places that do hire LPNs, and that's another thing. Like, because there are so few LPNs in the country, there are so few LPNs in these type of positions. I've been on teams that had like 30 something people, and I've been maybe one of two LPNs. Then when I worked in inpatient CDI, I was the only LPN on my team. That team had like maybe, I think, 15 people, but it was mainly RNs. We had a few MPs and a few MDs. I was the only LPN, but I was the only LPN, but I had one of the highest QA scores. Like, my lowest QA score was 99% accuracy and quality. So, that speaks for itself. But I tie it all, and I owe it all to my coding knowledge. because there's just no, I don't know how you can do CDI or DRG validation without knowing medical coding. I don't. It just ties it all together and it makes your job easier. And this is what I want LPNs to know. I just want you to know that there are options available. You don't have to go to school to become an RN because, truth be told, I've had my company where I train nurses for several years now, and the majority of my students are RNs who want to get away from the bedside. And if we know, like if we look at the stats, I mean, nurses are jumping ship left and right from the bedside. And you don't have to leave nursing altogether. You don't have to put your nursing hat, your clinical skills on the shelf and go do something else. All you have to do is just leave the bedside. But there are plenty of other opportunities that are available, in my opinion, and I know for a fact through medical coding. It is the quickest. I'm not going to say it's easy because medical coding is not easy to learn. And that's why you need to put yourself in a program or position yourself with someone who is really going to train you the correct way. So I don't want this video to be too long because I know I've covered a lot of territory, but I just really wanted LPNs to know that you have options other than waiting for a bridge program or going through a bridge program and then becoming an RN. Now, if that's your goal, good luck to you. God bless you. But for those who don't want to or don't have the time to, medical coding is waiting for you. There are opportunities that are waiting. I mean, people don't even know that there are jobs out here in medical coding that require you. I've had several jobs that require you to have a coding credential and they require you to have a nursing license. So that is the power of your skill set, and the two marry together very, very nicely. And I can't stress enough the importance of looking into other options and considering all your options and to at least think about medical coding. And to close out, I'm going to talk about my program. I have um, several courses, but my main two courses are ICD-10-CM because ICD-10-CM is foundational to medical coding. So you have to know ICD-10-CM, which is a diagnosis and this disease and injury coding. Then my next most popular course is ICD-10-PCS, and ICD-10-PCS is the inpatient procedure code set. So most people who want to get into CDI, and that's the end goal for most of the nurses who take my classes, they want to get into CDI. So they take my ICD-10-CM course first because you have to have a foundation. Then they go on to PCS, and then those that go on to get certified, they do get jobs because you have to, like, the end goal, like that's going to school for medical coding and not getting a certification is like going to nursing school but not sitting for your NCLEX. Like, what sense does that make? Like, you went through all of that, you studied all of that for what? Because you can't. It doesn't matter that you graduated from nursing school if you don't have if you don't have a valid occupational license from the state board of nursing for whatever state you live in. Nobody's going to hire you. So you have to go into this knowing that you have to get certified. Like, there's no other way around it, honestly, because that's going to give you the most solid chance at success. So, um, in my description, I have a link to several of my main website, and I offer um, different services as well. So if you want to schedule a consultation and have a conversation, I have a link for that too. So at the end of the day, I just want you to be happy. I want you to be fulfilled, and I want you to know all of what's available to you as an LPN. So take care, good luck, and thanks for watching.